on a Sunday in September, probably much like this one. My father and mother and my brother, Jerry, carried me through the alley over here from Union Street. They had put some money down on a house, a little white bungalow on Union Street. And we had moved in there, and I was born in that house. They carried me through the alley and brought me into Olive Branch, and that was a great day in my life. They certainly did the right thing. We lived there for some time, and then things changed in our country. And the Depression came, and my parents could no longer make the payments. So a very kind family from Olive Branch contacted my mother and said they would like to rent our house. And my mother had discussed that we would move in with my grandmother. My grandmother owned Quinette's grocery store on South Meridian Street. 2053 is the address. And we moved in with my grandmother, and that was a glorious day. I've had so many good days. That was a glorious day. We were only going to stay a short time until we could get back into our house on Union Street, but it didn't work out that way. My grandfather passed away, and my grandmother was running the grocery store by herself. So we moved in there, and I'd like to think we were a big help. I think we were. And it sure was fun. I had so many friends who wanted to spend the night with me, because after the store closed, you can imagine what happened. After the store closed, we went in there. And they had a choice of the ice cream section or the cheese section. Many of them chose that one. Or the candy section. And a few picked up the bright red apples out of the fruit section. So that was my life for a long time, and it was wonderful. I went to school 35 from there, and I walked with my friends. There were a lot of us in the neighborhood, and my friends were from church too. And I enjoyed every minute of that part of my life. Things happened during the time I lived there. There was a tragedy, just like all lives. My uncle, my grandmother's son, was a detective, and he was chasing some criminals, and they found them, he and his partner. And when they entered the building, they went up the steps quietly, and one was to open the door and one was to back the other person up. But it didn't happen exactly that way. And my uncle was shot. And they rushed him to the hospital. And my mother sat with my grandmother for 3 or 4 days at the hospital. And there was even a picture in the paper of him. There weren't that many tragedies in those days like there seem to be today. And he passed away. He could not make it. So that was a sad day in our place, in our where we lived and around us in the community. It was a sad day. But many things were bright. I didn't know how benevolent my grandmother was. She knew everybody. If any of you can remember, I'm trying to see how many, I don't think very many can remember. Do you really? Do you really? Okay. And I know Toby remembers my uncle Freeman. He loved my Uncle Freeman. But anyway, it was a remarkable place. And my grandmother, I always wondered she had a place over on the wall, and it had little holes in it with little notebooks. And I thought, gosh, that's a funny thing to have in the store. And it was for the people who couldn't pay. And they would come in on Friday. It always had to be on Friday. And she was always in there on Friday. And they would write in the book how much they owed. Nobody knew that, but that's what it was. I didn't know what it was at first. And they would pay what they could. And she would accept that. I don't know, I don't see that happen at Kroger's. I don't know, it just seems like a different world. It was a different world, I have to admit that, it was a different world. So anyway, finally, the time came when we could move back home on Union Street, right across the street from Jim. And it was a wonderful day when we did that, I have to say that. But I missed the people, and I missed the coming and going. And I especially missed a family that came in, and they had one of the little notebooks up here. And I didn't know that they were that way, but they lived, and I hate to use this term, but some of you will know, they lived in Dogtown. And that was down on the river. And I know, I see heads nodding, yes, some people do know. We didn't talk about it, but they lived down there. And a little girl, I brought her home with me one day. And I asked her at school if she would like to come the next day, and she said, oh, yes, she would like to. So she lived there, and she came the next day and said, yes, her mother said she could come. So she came home from school with me. I talked to her, and they didn't have running water. And I said, do you have a bath or a shower? And she said, oh no. She said, we go to the pump. There was I think a pump for everybody. I don't know. And I said, would you like to take a bath? I was very brave. Would you like to take a bath? She was so dirty. And she said, oh, do you have a bathtub? And I said, well, yes, we do. And I went in and ran the water, and I said, I'll be right outside the door. I'll be right outside the door. And you come in and take a bath. And I went to my closet, and I got a Auckland underwear, and I got her a dress, and put it inside the door, and I said, if you need anything, call me. But I could hear, and I think she even sang. I could hear the water. She was moving around with the water. But I'm sure she was either humming or singing. When she came out, she just looked beautiful. And just as she came out, my mother came home from work. Oh dear. So she walked in and she said, well, hi, Kathleen. She said, I'm glad you came today. And you look so pretty. Come back and see us. And I looked at Mother, and I just kept looking, and Mother said, I'm glad you invited her. She never said a word about my best dress going home with Kathleen. That's what a mother's for. And it was a wonderful day for me. So I appreciate everything from Olive Branch, my mother, my mother-in-law, my aunts, my sister-in-law, my brother, all these families. I was privileged to see them every Sunday. My aunts and uncles, my cousins. One Sunday I was directing the choir, and when I turned around, I thought, I wish I could count. And afterwards I did, I had 18 relatives here. Isn't that a remarkable thing? This is a glorious church. We need to keep it here. There still is a community. I have to say one thing, my mother loved to play cards. And she had a bridge club. Agnes was in the bridge club. One of your relatives was in the bridge club. They met at our house, and they had the best time. But on Sunday morning, here they were, ready to go, ready to help, ready to love. I thank you for having us speak about things not just our mothers, but our grandmothers, and our aunts and our uncles, and the people of this community and of this church. Thanks for allowing me to speak to you today.